I'm going to be doing a series of short videos today. I'm going to get 3 videos uploaded all together, just to kind of keep this short. I'm going to keep this very low tech. The information that I'm going to be referring to is mostly out of this textbook, the Wellings and Uxton's book. That's the book that I recommend for this course. However, you do not need a textbook in order to do well in this course. I would recommend, though, that you get some sort of intro to audiology textbook for your library. All of you guys that are taking this class will be speech-language pathologists practicing full-time sooner or later, and you'll be surprised how many times you need to refer back to audiology sorts of things in your course, in your scopes of practice. I look back in my speech-language pathology textbooks all the time. So get your hands on some sort of intro to audiology textbook. In the syllabus, I note some ones that you can use if you don't have the time or the resources to get this one. You can get the older edition of this one. You can get any sort of intro to audiology textbook, as I said, just to keep for your library. Try to keep it within maybe the last 3 to 5 years, just so that the technology section, specifically about hearing aids and cochlear implants, isn't too old. So let's just jump right in. What is audiology? So it wasn't so long ago I wouldn't have been able to answer that question. I came to this field after working for years and years in college student services. I got my master's degree in the late 90s at a school in Missouri in counseling psych, after having gotten my undergrad in in psychology at a school in Iowa. That's where I grew up. And I liked practicing counseling. I worked for years in college student services, both in the university residence halls, like the dorms, but also college student counseling centers, Greek life, college student funding, college student activities, pretty much the non-academic side of college student work. And I enjoyed it, but it was a little too touchy-feely, a little too ooey-gooey for my taste, if that makes sense. I liked helping people, I did know that, but I sort of was increasingly needing the help that I gave to people being based on something real, being based on science, being based on something that I could look at, I could touch, so that I could kind of experience in the real world. Meaning that I needed to be able to have test results that I did, interpret them, and then be able to help the person accordingly. So having said that, audiology is a field that's very good for somebody, I guess, like me, and let me see if this resonates with you. I'm somebody who has always enjoyed a little bit of a lot of different things. I think that I have a lot of skills and abilities, limited skills and abilities in a lot of different things. In other words, I don't feel like, most people growing up sort of think, oh, that's the one thing I really like, or the one thing that I'm really good at. I never really had that experience. I felt like I could be interested in that, I could be interested in this. What I lacked in the college student service work was, as I said, that sort of real science. I was getting enough of the social science, but I needed something more based on, as I said, facts. So audiology being something that's kind of a good marriage of both physical science, actual science, and then social science, the science of working with people. So I am, on a given day, able to put that scientist hat on, take that off, and put the social worker hat on, take that off, put the other one on, to put them both on at the same time, what have you. Speech-language pathology is a little bit a field that's like that as well. You could think of physical therapy, occupational therapy, also within those sorts of fields. Medical, health, science, helping professions, but they also sort of skew towards the social work side of things. Doctors and nurses are very, very good at what they do, but they really need to keep things focused on the science side of things, and the social science aspect of it is maybe something for someone else to take care of. Nurses maybe to a lesser extent, but you get what I'm trying to say. So a little bit more about audiology. Audiology is a field that's relatively new. In fact, there are only about 3 generations of audiologists out there. Audiology as a field did not come out of ear, nose, and throat science uniquely until the 1940s. So what happened in the 1940s? Well, World War II ended, and veterans coming back from the South Pacific and from Europe for the first time were coming back with hearing loss. The nature of war changed such in a way that the bombs that were being used and the frontline sort of, I guess, damage to life and limb that veterans were undergoing for the first time involved actual hearing loss. Veterans coming back had the typical injuries that most veterans had, but in addition, they had hearing loss. We had young men and women coming back, and you have to remember that World War II was kind of magic isn't quite the right word, but it was one of the last times in history, maybe 9/11 notwithstanding, but that this country was very united behind a common cause, where pretty much 99% of the people were all on board. So when the men and women coming back from service needed help with hearing loss, a unique field emerged. The Veterans Associations could not handle the amount of people coming back with hearing loss on their own, so they had to create an entirely new force of people, audiologists, that were meant just to diagnose and rehabilitate the hearing loss that the veterans had withstood. Now, having said that, your first question is probably, well, prior to World War II, were there not people with hearing loss? The answer is, of course there were. However, veterans coming back from the war were heroes, and veterans were people that, as I said, people wanted to get behind. People with hearing loss prior to veterans coming back fell into one of two categories in the minds of most Americans. Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that this is right. This is just what sort of the prevailing notions were amongst Americans. If you had hearing loss prior to World War II in this country, you were deemed to be deaf and dumb. Like I said, those are not my words, and it is a pejorative to say deaf and dumb in today's language. But at the time, think around the 1940s and before, people with hearing loss were born that way, so they were considered deaf and sent to another school, had an entirely different life that had its own language, sign language. They pretty much were sort of kept away from regular society, or it was age-related. You lived your life, you developed hearing loss, and you were sort of at the end of life, and that was the way it was. So think about that. We had people with hearing loss falling into one of two categories, sort of the disabled that historically we have not really paid a whole lot of attention to or a whole lot of care to, or the elderly, another group of people that historically the United States has not put much stock into. This isn't a surprise to you guys, but the United States is a country, and all countries are this way to some degree, but we're sort of the pioneers of overvaluing people for their youth, overvaluing people for their beauty, and overvaluing people for their ability. Hearing loss and wearing hearing aids flies in the face of those three things: lack of ability, lack of beauty, even if that's just perceived, and lack of youth, meaning that we perceive hearing loss to be associated either with the disabled or the very old. So as I said, veterans coming back flew in the face of that, and for the first time we realized that there was a group of people needing assistance that were not one of those two groups. Raymond Carhart is sort of the founder of audiology, but the takeaway of all of this is that audiology is still a new field. There are people alive today practicing audiology that remember a time when there was not such a thing as audiology. So that's the first of these videos today. I'm going to get this posted, and we will do two more. The next one is going to be about the audiogram and acoustics, and then the one after that will be about some ear and hearing anatomy and physiology. Thank you.